Uh-oh. I bet a lot of you guys are typing angry comments right now based on the title of this video alone. How dare I criticize this game? I've crossed the line. I think for many of you, EA has lowered your expectations strategically with years and years of terrible games. So now when you play something slightly better than terrible, you overrate it. At least, I'm seeing a lot of that on Twitter. I genuinely wanted to like this game. I actually enjoyed last year's College Football 25. After 10 years without a college football title, 25 surprised most of us. Player movement may have been unrealistic, but it was fast, fluid, and most importantly, fun. Unlike any Madden since the PS3 days, at least for me. It felt more similar to PS2 era EA Sports football titles, which is a good thing. We had been dying for a new football game that felt different from Madden. That was the bar. And with good presentation and a solid dynasty mode, you had a decent football game that felt fresh, even if it was a bit bare bones, which was exciting. Gameplay logic issues were present, but easy to dismiss, because the game wasn't trying to be realistic. That freedom of player movement made the usual EA issues more forgivable. Perhaps I was too kind towards that game, but I ended up giving it a 6.5 out of 10 in my revised review, which isn't a great score, but for an EA Sports game, it was definitely better than usual, and it was fun. But what makes a football video game fun? The most important part to me is the gameplay. It has to give the user creative freedom and allow you to recreate what you envision in your head or what you see on TV. There has to be a wide range of outcomes on any given play. It has to be unpredictable. Madden's issue for years has been how scripted and predictable each play feels. When you overbalance a sports game for an online competitive meta, you end up with gameplay that gets repetitive quickly. You may have fun playing this game or the usual Madden release for a month or so, and then it gets boring. If you're still in the honeymoon stage right now with 26, come back to this video in a month and tell me I'm wrong. EA Sports has never made a good simulation football game. They've tried to make player movement realistic, such as with real player motion in Madden 19, but that backfired so hard, they went right back to arcade-leaning gameplay with Madden 20. Last year's Madden 25 was yet another attempt to make a more sim-focused game, and again, the result was a less fun product. This is because EA develops their games with a scripted approach. If you run the same play against the same defense over and over, you will get the same results most of the time. Comp players expect this. Your offensive line will attempt to block the exact same defenders in the exact same way. Your receivers will run the exact same route the exact same way. Defensive backs, same thing. The AI players on the field, they don't have the ability to make their own decisions based on how a play develops. Instead, they follow a predetermined script that is assigned to them before the snap. If they finish their job and the play is still going, they usually just stand there confused, or just mindlessly chase the ball carrier if they're on defense. You have control over one player, while the other 10 are lobotomized. Instead of making the game about player ratings, edge defenders will insta-shed blocks when the game catches you holding sprint around the edge. EA even said publicly that if you run into an insane glitch where your kicker freezes and doesn't kick a field goal, it's because the kick was predetermined to be blocked. Just like with Madden, College Football 26 is a heavily scripted game. However, this was true with last year's game and EA's best titles. Madden NFL 05 on PS2 has the same logic, as does NCAA Football 06 or even 14. These games weren't good because they were realistic. They were good because they were fun and arcade-leaning and had a ton of depth. On the field, they weren't trying to be something they were not. 2K, on the other hand, had a very different approach back when they made football games. Unlike with EA's games, in 2K5, every player on the field has the ability to make continuous dynamic decisions. If you run the same play against the same defense over and over, you will actually get different results. Sometimes your left guard will block one guy, sometimes he'll double team with the center, sometimes he'll double team with the left tackle, sometimes he'll try a completely different strategy to handle a blitz and block someone else. Defensive players react to the blocking and adjust on the fly dynamically, attempting new paths to the quarterback or ball carrier. Sometimes your receiver will run his route slightly differently, sometimes he'll be covered slightly differently. Field goal blocks weren't timing-based minigames, they were caused by poor blocking. Nothing in the gameplay was predetermined or scripted. This key difference creates gameplay that not only unfolds organically, but also does a better job of simulating actual football. EA's scripting might lead to smoother gameplay on the surface, but it lacks the replay value of something like 2K5, a game many are still playing today despite its outdated playbooks and graphics. To the untrained eye, none of this is too noticeable, and at EA's best, they grant player movement that's so fast and fluid that you can actually ignore these logic issues at play, because when the ball is in your hands, anything can happen, which offsets the scripting. What makes a football game fun is that unpredictability. And if you can't grant that freedom with core logic, you can still grant it with player movement. This is what made College Football 25 a fun game, and it's the reason I enjoyed it so much. Defense was difficult to master in 25, yes, because player movement wasn't predictable. That's not a bad thing, but the competitive online crowd complained about it, and EA unfortunately listened to this crowd when adjusting gameplay for College Football 26. They ruined what made the game special, and now we have a game that feels just like the last decade of Madden titles with some refinement. Some might think this game is a step up because it's more realistic, but the game at its core is too broken to be realistic, so you're left with a slower, more predictable game than last year, and the tiny updates to the game modes don't fix this issue. This highlights a broader problem with EA. Instead of having a clear vision for their games, they pander to the loudest voices, typically the competitive Ultimate Team crowd, the players that shaped Madden into what it is today. And when nearly every creator covering this game is partnered with EA in some capacity, independent criticism, such as mine in this video, can feel jarring to those used to more positive coverage. EA has lowered expectations by releasing terrible games over the years, to the point where those unfamiliar with the PS2 era celebrate mediocre updates as revolutionary rather than lazy. The few non-sponsored creators are disregarded as haters or negative for views, because the community narrative is dominated by EA game changers, most of whom lack knowledge about football gaming history, and their young and impressionable audiences eat their words up. Accountability becomes dismissed as hate or living in the past. And not only does EA essentially own most content creators covering their games, they also own exclusive simulation rights for making college football games now. Yeah, that's right, not only do they have exclusive simulation rights for NFL games, but now college football. So this creates another issue. When at your best, you create arcade-leaning sports games, you shouldn't hold the exclusive simulation rights to these licenses. EA makes arcade-leaning sports games, and then holds these sim licenses hostage so no competitor can make a genuine simulation game. Some of you may be a little confused, thinking I usually push for and want a more sim-focused game. And now that College Football 26 is more sim-focused, I must be a hypocrite for not liking it. But my stance has been consistent. A simulation game is not possible from EA unless they rebuild their code from scratch and abandon the Frostbite engine. So they shouldn't hold exclusive simulation rights. They should play to their strengths, which would be arcade-leaning games such as College Football 25 that aren't necessarily realistic. Another company should make a sim-focused game instead. College Football 26 is a massive step backwards on the field because of this. Dynasty Mode, Road to Glory, and Presentation did receive some positive updates, but these updates all should have and could have been in College Football 25. Why does it take community feedback for EA to realize a roster breakdown visual while recruiting would make sense? Is the addition of formation subs worthy of praise when it's been in Madden for years? Presentation, while improved, still lags behind games like NCAA Football 14 when it comes to halftime reports and studio updates. Broadcast packages aren't even close to where they were in NCAA Basketball 10, for example. Don't even get me started with a 2K5 comparison. The day-to-night transitions and school traditions are nice, but not exactly revolutionary. There's nothing special about this game, but if you've been conditioned to forget what's been done historically, and you only view sports games through the narrow lens of the last decade, then sure, this game might seem impressive. EA strategically lowers player expectations over time, and it seems to be working better than ever as the glory days become more and more distant and their audience becomes younger and younger. I'm not as easily fooled, and I was able to overlook a lot of these issues last year due to it being the first game in a while, and because gameplay was so fun and fresh. College Football 26 costs at least $70, all for small updates that could have been done in a patch to 25, and gameplay that has heavily regressed in my opinion. The game is also buggier than ever. It is simply not worth paying full price for, and this is an obvious year to skip. You can keep playing 25 without missing out on much at all. When weighing the fact that this is a fully priced video game, most of us already own 25, and the gameplay itself is such a step backwards, there's no way I can praise this game in good faith. The freeing player movement that made 25 fun, that literally made the game, and allowed me to overlook the greater flaws in it, is now absent. And the result is a game that is simply not good. Calling this game good would be an insult to every genuinely good game ever made. Sports games could be incredible with modern technology. They could be virtual museums, allowing players to experience the rich history of these sports. They could be teaching tools, allowing the user to create their own schemes and concepts and situations and test them. Instead, they haven't really improved much outside of graphics over the last 20 years, and in many areas, they've gotten worse. It's sad, and College Football 26 doesn't come close to accomplishing any of what I just mentioned. It was easier to recommend last year's game since it was the first college football game in a decade, and it felt fresh, it felt different. This year, $70 is a tough ask for a game that easily could have been an update to 25 and has creative changes that I disagree with. Let's dive in. As I mentioned in the intro, the core logic of this game is scripted, but player movement has been nerfed, while defensive pursuit has improved. This results in gameplay that's easier to play defense with, and results in a more balanced and predictable online game. But this also removes what made College Football 25 so much better than the usual Madden title. Clearly, EA wants users to rely less on the left stick and the sprint button, so now it's more effective to use the slower right stick juke move, stiff arms, and only use sprint selectively. This is less fun to play. In some cases, the game feels close. Top players, especially those with the east-west playmaker archetype, almost have that fun, fluid, and cheesy movement. So if you're playing with a team like Alabama that has a top running back, you might not notice the regression in player movement as quickly. But when you play with most teams, with most players when the ball is in your hands, movement is sluggish, and fatigue penalties accrue with every skill move. You can no longer get creative and juke or swerve your way around the field. Now, you get more easily sucked into animations. If there's a small gap closing in, you can fit it in 25, but you'll get sucked into a tackle in 26. Making defenders miss is simplified. Highlight clips from this game are more about getting broken tackle animations rather than breaking ankles. This would be fine in a game that was built from the ground up to be a simulation football game, don't get me wrong. On the surface, these aren't necessarily bad additions. But when player AI, blocking, and all these scripted elements are at play, this results in a more predictable, boring game on the field. This reminds me of when Madden 20 nerfed quarterback speed behind the line of scrimmage. Unless you had the escape artist ability, which you could only have on an X-Factor player, you'd be extremely slow. This made players who are genuinely fast but not top guys like Tyrod Taylor unusable, and if you drafted a scrambling quarterback, he wouldn't be able to play to his strengths until he developed into an X-Factor with that ability. College Football 26 similarly nerfs movement for almost every player, and unless you have a generational guy, movement and gameplay speed will feel slow. While increasing the speed threshold and differentiating between top players and average players is realistic on the surface, the game at its core is unrealistic, so now it's just less fun. If you disliked player movement in College Football 25, I guess you'd like this better, but I'm not sure why EA catered to the minority when the majority loved the gameplay. I went back to 25 to see if I was tripping, and the difference is night and day. You shoot out of a cannon like you have a rocket strapped to your back on handoffs. You can turn on a dime, and the most subtle tweak of the left stick can get you by a defender. I felt at home again playing 25. I still really enjoy the gameplay. Even if it's not realistic, even if it's not 2K5, I enjoy 25's gameplay because it was fun and it was freeing. Going to 26 feels like a chore. It feels like I've already played this game so many times before because it feels like the last decade of Madden titles. Some might argue it's a football game. How can I expect anything different from Madden's gameplay? Because Madden's a football game. Well, kids, as I showed before, 2K football was made different at its very core. A 20-year-old game should not be relevant, so it might sound weird to the uninitiated, but EA has never surpassed 2K football entirely. As time goes on, more and more players forget or never play 2K football. Some accuse me of being blinded by nostalgia, despite the fact that when I reference 2K5, I'm pointing out objective features and differences that modern games lack. In 2025, we should not be chasing the past. We should be innovating and looking forward. Gameplay from All Pro Football 2K8 shouldn't look impressive, yet it does. EA has held a monopoly for so long that the younger crowd has no idea what they're missing, and they can't even comprehend something different because they've never seen it. EA's gameplay isn't sim football, and the more they try and pretend like it is, the worse the game gets. I'm not expecting real-life football perfectly executed in every way, but games like All Pro Football 2K8 show you what genuinely good sim gameplay could look like. Games like NCAA 06 and even College Football 25 show you how fun an EA football game can be with cheesy arcade player movement and speed. 26 fails to be a good arcade game or a good sim game. I'd place it here. It's just awkward. The regression of player movement allows more flaws to become visible. Blocking is basically just as bad as last year, despite how much they advertised improvements. Instead of determining edge play outcomes based on player ratings, if you hold sprint running to the edge, the defender instantly sheds his blocker most of the time. It plays just like Madden. Squib kicks go right to a player, they never bounce. If you lateral the ball, somehow it always goes right to someone on your team, even though your player can't see them. Tipped passes are always caught more by the defense than the offense. Throwing the ball is less about hitting a guy with timely anticipation and more about dinking and dunking and abusing out routes. Trajectory, as always, is not realistic and not close to as satisfying as it was in 2K football. The core premise of the passing game is to wait for a drag route to go outside of a defender's zone and then hit them. To be successful, you take advantage of poorly programmed defender AI and speed mismatches, not actual X's and O's. All the same shallow cross and mesh concepts that dominate Madden dominate this game too. You're not playing real football, you're playing Madden. It's the same old song and dance for those of you who've been playing these EA games for years. Running to the outside has been completely nerfed, which was one of the most fun parts of last year's gameplay. Some might say, just get good at the game. But skill level is irrelevant to these core issues. You can get really good at playing this game, adjust to all of its quirks, and run and pass the ball with ease. But that doesn't make the gameplay logical, organic, or good. Getting good at the game doesn't fix the core issues with AI decision making. It doesn't fix the fact that 10 other players on your team have no brain at all. Where College Football 25 masked these issues, 26 brings them to the forefront. Those who reply to legitimate criticism with get good takes are missing the point entirely. We've seen this with Madden year after year. When someone pays full price for a game like this and they invest their time into it, they will defend it, because they take criticism aimed at EA as a personal attack for some reason. It's a dumb mindset, but it's very common online these days. I've also seen people say that you need to understand real football to be good at this game. Bruh. This game is far too scripted to make such a claim. Just stop. If you think this game is all about applying real football knowledge and concepts, then you must feel the same way about the last decade of Madden titles. You probably thought Madden 19 was a great game. With all of that said, there are improvements to gameplay that I do like, but they aren't massive enough to save gameplay. On PS5, the controller haptics are much stronger, and I do like them a lot. I like how defenders are programmed to not be able to make interceptions when their head is turned, even though it still happens. I like the new reach for it mechanic, where you can push up on the right stick to extend the ball for more yards, and it has a nice risk and reward element where you fumble if you do it carelessly. This right here is genuinely a great new addition to football video games. I like how quarterbacks can use juke moves in the pocket now, but I don't like that Playmaker controls have been remapped. Something like Playmaker has to be quick, and adding an extra button to the mix makes it more difficult to execute. I like the variety of player abilities and how different certain archetypes feel. I do like the harder hit sticks. I am being positive right now, chat. Almost every issue you know from Madden, however, is present. CPU play calling is awful. CPU quarterbacks make terrible decisions. CPU coaches rarely challenge plays. There's almost no adjustments from the CPU. Defenders will swat passes they couldn't possibly see coming. Stunts and twists on the defensive line are added, but unlike in 2K5, you can't pick them before a play. They are a part of the play, giving you less freedom for play calling. You can change the stunts before the snap at least if you can do it in time, and it is nice to see them in the game finally. But overall, gameplay feels like a step back to me. Maybe you disagree and prefer the more realistic gameplay, but I don't think this gameplay fits when the core logic of the game is so broken. I think it just makes everything worse. I see a lot of people on Twitter claiming gameplay is way better. Let's see if you still feel that way in a month when the new factor wears off. And maybe I'm off target here. I'm just a guy giving my damn opinion online. But these are my thoughts so far, as someone who put over 500 hours into 25 and has been playing 26 since early access opened. I see Frostbite legacy issues everywhere, and it feels to me like EA copied a ton of code over from Madden 25, rather than building on top of College Football 25 with new code. There's too much shared between these two games now, and for me, it ruins the gameplay. Dynasty mode is very similar to last year, with some tuning and some positive changes that I do like. A lot more of your players will enter the transfer portal, and in response, you'll need to use the transfer portal to fill out your team, which is essentially what's happening in real life. There are some subtle tweaks all around, like a roster breakdown being visible while recruiting, your coach is visible on the right side of the screen, and the historical record is nice and helps you remember what happens over the years. Edge terminology for positions is finally here, which helps a lot. But all of these additions are small, and while they are good things, they could have easily been added in a patch to 25. We're accepting updates as brand new fully priced video games. Have you guys played non-sports games recently? Fortnite can get an update that adds 4 new game modes, completely changes the entire map, and even changes movement. Live service games get insane patches. There is nothing about College Football 26 that couldn't have been done in a patch to 25. The game is literally a patch to 25 being sold as a standalone product. We only accept this as normal because sports games have been doing it for so long. But in a review where I'm trying to be objective, I'm going to call these yearly releases out for what they are: a cash grab. If you're someone who only plays Dynasty mode, and you just want to rebuild a bunch of schools with updated rosters, and you don't really care too much about the gameplay changes, you'll probably like this game more. But is it really worth $70? Imagine if Mario Kart came out every year, and they added one new track this year and some UI tweaks, maybe slowed down kart speed, and it was still full price, despite the rest of the game being the same as the Mario Kart you had last year. That's what sports games are. Dynasty mode still needs a lot of work. Team Builder is still a laggy website lacking options for stadium customization. It should be in-game. There should be an entire Create a School mode where you can build your uniform, branding, mascot, and even design your school's campus, and as you grow the program, you can visually upgrade your campus and stadium. There should be much better news presentation, where the world feels alive, and you can see highlights and stories around college football. This is a basic Dynasty mode that works and is fun, but don't act like it's something special. There is little to no evolution of these modes over time. When no one is innovating, it may be tough to picture what could be possible because nobody is showing you. But with some more creativity and passion, this mode could be special. For now it's fine, and it is the best part of the game, and it is better than last year. But it's certainly not worthy of a $70 purchase, assuming you own 25 already. It's inexcusable that 25 didn't get these minor Dynasty tweaks in a patch. The big new addition to Road to Glory is High School, even though it was in the old NCAA football games. It's somehow worse in this game, even though we've had over 10 years to evolve it. In high school, your stats are not tracked. The presentation of the mode thinks you're in college, so when you're viewing a depth chart or stats or schedules, it only shows college teams that you're not a part of. Instead of playing full games, you play moments you select, essentially a few drives, and you have a couple goals like juke a defender 2 times, and if you accomplish these goals, you get more offers from colleges. But if your goal is to run for a first down, it doesn't matter if you finish the game with 30 yards or 300 yards. Your stats are not tracked, not viewable, and essentially anything you do outside of hitting these goals or not is pointless. It's a very lazy implementation. The message system is much slower than last year somehow. Button presses take forever to register. I had Ohio State reach out to me numerous times, and every time I rebuffed them and said something rude about how I don't want to go there. Then, at the end of my high school career, Ryan Day sent me a message saying, "We know you've been very vocal about wanting to come to Ohio State." Bro, what? There's a hat selection minigame for picking your college team, and while I like the concept, it should have been there last year, and it's kind of broken, at least in my playthrough. It took a whole minute for the game to register that I pressed X to stand up and start the scene. I was spamming X, clicking it, tapping it, holding it, trying everything. Then, when I tossed aside one hat and was left with Air Force and UMass, the game just chose Air Force for me. I didn't even click anything. I was actually planning on committing to UMass. Walkouts are cool and add to the immersion, but you can't control your player, only the camera. I wish I could kind of swerve around with the left stick. I wish I could use different button combos while aiming with that left stick to dance, wave my arms gritty, whatever, but it's out of your control. Regardless, it does add to the experience. I did like how you have more control over things like ball carrier style, run style, and different 2-point stances, but the rest of the mode is basically the exact same as last year. You can only be a few positions, you can't even be a tight end or a safety, let alone a punter or a fullback. Let's not get carried away. The old games let you pick any position though. Your teammates are really dumb. Whenever I call a pass play as a running back, my quarterback throws a pick, or gets sacked, or gets a safety. There are some funny new situations that pop up, like getting rejected with a no riz text and other humorous ones. But other than that, it's basically last year's mode with a half-baked high school thrown in to check off a box. The logic is bad. It's really all about getting a high GPA. It's not nearly as good as 2K's My Career, or Road to the Show and MLB The Show, and those are modes that have stagnated. EA is somehow always behind. I really wish this game had some form of MUT draft. You guys remember that? You would draft a team of Ultimate Team cards, and then play online with that team until you lost 3 games. And no money is needed to be spent. Why isn't that here? The best thing you can do in Ultimate Team is play co-op with friends. We did a 3v3 mode, which was fun, although the other team got this glitch when kicking off. And then they got possession of the ball, which was really cool. But I'm not sure why this is only an Ultimate Team thing. Why can't we have game modes where we can play with friends in the same team online with regs? EA hasn't invented a new game mode in years, but I feel like a mode where everyone controls a player and plays together, like pro clubs in FIFA, would be so much fun in a football game. But no, expect the bare minimum from EA. Their games don't evolve. They just get meta tweaks, new rosters, and old features rebranded as new features. Card packs seem very expensive in this game. I don't really play Ultimate Team because I think a pay-to-win game mode in a $70 video game is really dumb. You'll still see ad pop-ups pushing you to play this mode all over the game in classic EA fashion. Even creators who usually play Ultimate Team are calling it trash. Tell me again how this is a great game, how I'm just too negative, and how I'm just a hater, please. They listened and brought back the trophy room. My thought is, why did they need us to remind them to bring this back? Why wasn't it in the game last year when it was in older NCAA games? Also, while I appreciate the feature, it's not an evolution by any means. In 2K5, you had a crib you could walk around, decorate, and view 3D renders of your trophies that pile up in your house. You had a legitimate crib. You'd think in 2025 we'd have an updated trophy room that could at least match what 2K did in 04, but no. At least it's here though. I'm not going to complain that it's here. I'm glad it's here. Because trying to accumulate all the trophies adds a good bit of replayability and gives you an excuse to try playing with different schools. I obviously like the concept, but I feel like in 2025 it should be more evolved. In NCAA Football 05, you had a moments mode where you could recreate iconic moments throughout college football history. Why, in 2025, do we not have a similar mode? You don't need accurate rosters. Just throw the guys you have the rights to from Ultimate Team in there and fill the rest of the rosters up with generic players. I don't think anyone would be that mad because we got to be realistic at the end of the day. But imagine being able to recreate the 06 Rose Bowl, or play with Herschel Walker for Georgia, or play in the early days of college football with leather helmets, all with stadiums, uniforms, equipment, and broadcast packages that represent that specific era. You would expect that in a college football game 20 years newer than NCAA Football 06. But no, you actually get less game modes now. You used to be able to create signs fans would hold, that's gone. You used to be able to create fans, also gone. You used to be able to use classic teams, gone. Games like NCAA Game Breaker had classic stadiums. There are no classic stadiums in this game. There's no mascot mode, even though that was heavily requested by the players and was in the old games. Create a play, an iconic classic feature in older EA football games, is not present. Imagine playing a solo dynasty and drawing up your own scheme with formations and play art. You could do this 20 years ago. You could do this in the first ever John Madden football. But in 2025, I guess that's too much to ask for. College Football 26 is pretty bare bones when you have historical reference points that go at least as far back as the PS2 era, and our expectations should be for EA to not just match the depth found in older games, but to exceed and evolve that depth. Instead, they're just behind, which is unacceptable for a fully priced video game releasing every damn year. The game's lighting looks great, and it looks better than last year. Day-to-night transitions are well done, and while they should have been in the game last year, at least they're here now. Commentary is the same as last year, but I'm getting annoyed by it. I like the voices and the commentators themselves, but their calls are so delayed. You'll hear, at the 30, when you're at the 15. You'll make guys miss and hear nothing. You'll break a huge play and hear silence until you break the plane. It's underwhelming, and at this point, I might just disable it. Say what you want about AI, but it could definitely help here. The crowd does some cool things, like throwing tortillas for a tradition, or making chants, or singing Mr. Brightside, and the sound of the crowd is actually great. But visually, the crowd looks rough. Zoom-ins of the fans look like something from a Chinese mobile game, and when the crowd audio gets wild, you'll notice from the gameplay camera perspective that they're just standing there, making it almost seem like the crowd audio is being pumped in the stadium speakers. This may sound like nitpicking, but for years NBA 2K has had their crowd jump, stomp, and cheer visually to match the audio and make it believable. The Jumbotron will show the mascot trying to mess you up when kicking, which is a cool touch I don't think we've ever seen before in a football game. You gotta give credit where it's due. Details with traditions are everywhere, and there's more than last year. But these improvements, while nice, again don't justify a $70 price tag. There are still no alternative broadcast packages like we had in NCAA Basketball 10. There's no legit halftime pregame or postgame report with studio updates like you'd seen in the older games. It feels pretty generic. And while they spent a ton of time getting accurate mascots and traditions for every team, outside of that, presentation is kind of mid. Some new details on the field, like quarterbacks clapping for the snap as the play clock winds down, are cool. And they carried over defensive players moving pre-snap from Madden 25. And jerseys get dirty as the game goes on. But overall, this is not a massive leap by any means, and it's still lacking compared to what games in the past have done. You'd think we'd have presentation that blows away what we saw 10 to 20 years ago, but instead we are still catching up to it. If this sounds absurd to you, please watch some of my retrospectives on classic sports games, and you'll realize a lot is missing here. There was a whole movement that went trending online, where players were asking EA for more updated equipment. Players have no necks, helmets don't fit accurately, details aren't accurate. All around the game, small details are missing. Some disregard this valid criticism by making fun of those asking for accurate equipment, saying they just want to play dress-up rather than football. I hate how this crowd makes fun of legitimate criticism. It reminds me of those online saying Madden's franchise mode is fine, and no one cares about updating hot dog prices, when the mode itself was so bare bones and awful, and the criticism it was receiving was legit, and the hot dog prices point was a straw man argument. These ignorant voices seem to be the ones EA prefers to listen to as well, which really sucks. At the end of the day, players in this game don't resemble how they look in real life. Everyone looks off. If EA really wants to make the game more realistic, maybe start by having players and equipment actually resemble reality. This feels like the NBA Live of college football games, but there isn't another game to compare it to, so it gets off the hook easier, thanks to that exclusivity. Now, the soundtrack is a major positive. Real songs like Blinding Lights or Industry Baby are in the game, but played by the EA Sports Marching Band. This band cooked. This is just like the marching band covers of popular songs back in the old NCAA March Madness games. This is a great improvement over last year's drums, which are still in the game if you want to enable them. EA also got some nice work from graphic designers. There's vintage EA logos, cool designs, throwback logos, and the game overall does a good job of feeling like a college sports game. The vibes are solid. The main menu is more detailed now too, showing gameplay footage for your favorite school. I wish it showed real life footage like we saw in the old PS2 games, but it is a step up from last year in this area. In terms of polish and bugs, this game is buggier than last year, but your mileage may vary. I had this insane glitch happen to me, as I mentioned earlier. There are way more online. Players celebrating with the wrong team, kicking teams freezing up during a kick that was predetermined to be blocked before the snap, and other bugs you'll commonly see in Madden are present. Bugs you've been seeing in Madden for years are present. It's a buggy, unpolished, and frankly unfinished patch to 25 that is being sold as a brand new game. I wanted to briefly talk about the online discourse surrounding this game. I keep seeing comments that say things like, "SoftDrink, I normally enjoy your videos, but now you're just being too negative," after I simply tweeted that I preferred 25's movement. I hadn't even gone nearly as hard as I am in this video on Twitter yet. These types of responses make zero sense. If you watch my videos regularly, you'd be educated on how good sports games used to be, and you would obviously expect more from these releases. You would fully understand why I hold these games to these standards. I think a lot of you guys missed college football games, and you're happy they're back, and you're willing to overlook issues with the game to just have fun. That is okay. It's like eating junk food. But don't pretend like you're eating a gourmet meal. My job is to provide as objective of a review as I can, not to be quote-unquote positive or validate your decision to buy the game. Here's what happens every year. A lot of you guys watch the EA-sponsored content leading up to release because most videos covering these games are by EA-sponsored creators and their sponsored videos. It all sounds so positive because it's just marketing. Then the game comes out, you buy it, and you have some fun playing something that feels a bit different from last year. But as time goes on, that honeymoon stage ends, and you realize you're playing the exact same game you've been playing for years. And you can either choose to be honest with yourself about it, or live in a state of EA-sponsored delusion. Every year I hear this, it's just a beta. Then, it's still in early access. Then, patches are coming. Then, this will just be fixed in next year's game. Of course, if you're a top competitive player, tiny tweaks that come in patches will be very noticeable to you, just like Tom Brady would notice a slight change to PSI in a football. But most people will not notice these small tweaks, and the greater core issues don't change. And I went in depth on this in my Sad Decline of Madden documentary, so if you normally enjoy my content, if you want to phrase your argument with that at the start, then you should fully understand my position, and you wouldn't be making these lazy excuses for a billion-dollar corporation. I've also seen comments claiming to be from longtime viewers saying I'm living in the past and I should stop talking about NFL 2K5. There's a level of 2K5 fatigue from a vocal minority of viewers who lack the ability to understand why I bring up the game so much. Direct your frustration towards EA for failing to surpass 2K5 entirely after over 20 years, not the one creator who isn't sponsored by EA. All I'm doing is holding these games accountable. That's how you properly review something. If a game from 04 can do it, a game from 2025 should do it even better. A game from 04 doing anything better than a game from 05 is insane. When you frame these comments with, "I normally agree with you," or "as a longtime fan of the channel," and then you make an argument that frankly doesn't make sense, you're providing insincere flattery in an attempt to manipulate me. It's like working customer service and hearing a Karen say, "I've been shopping here for years, therefore I'm entitled to X, Y, and Z." Just save it. Remember that EA holds exclusive rights to making action simulation college football games. They don't need you to stick up for them. They're gonna be fine. Choosing to come after creators individually, whether it's me for being too critical in your eyes, or even an EA game changer for being too positive, is dumb. There is no need to attack anyone individually over a damn video game. If you disagree with me, just play the game and enjoy it, and attack my ideas and my arguments. Whether I give a game a positive or negative review, it should not affect your enjoyment in any way. None of this is that deep, man. I gave College Football 25 a final score of 6.5 out of 10 in my review revision last year. For College Football 26, I'm feeling a 4 out of 10. On a sim to arcade spectrum, I'd place the game here. The changes made to the game modes were positive, but small and obvious additions, and the regression of gameplay ruins the experience. Presentation is good compared to your average Madden title, but is that saying anything at all? It could be so much better, and EA has lowered our expectations to the point where the bare minimum is somehow celebrated as revolutionary by some. If you want to play Dynasty with your buddies, or simply kill time doing rebuilds with updated rosters, you'll probably have fun with this game. But I think you'd have more fun playing 25 with $70 more in your pocket. If you already own 25, I really don't see a reason to buy this game at full price, unless you don't touch gameplay and just play Dynasty mode through the menus. And even then, $70 is a tough ask. You could buy Death Stranding 2 for the same price, man, like come on. If you usually enjoy Madden, and you find this video to be far too critical, you're probably not the target audience here, so you know what, good for you, man. If you already bought this game and you love it, great. I'm glad it meets your standards. But for me, the subtle improvements don't compensate for the worse gameplay, and the game is missing way too much to be worth $70. A 4 out of 10 almost seems generous. If this is all EA can do within a 1-year release cycle, then the game shouldn't release yearly. Take a year or two off with some roster update DLCs and build a stronger base game from scratch with new game modes and proper logic and more obvious improvements. For a game to be worth full price, it has to stand on its own, not be a slight update of a game we all bought a year ago. We're paying more money than ever for sports games that change less than ever, are buggier than ever, and are more shallow than ever, and I'm sick of it. At the end of the day, you can have fun with this game if you're a fan of college football, but it could be way better, and since I'm reviewing it, I have to keep it real. I'm not trying to say no one should play this game. I'm just trying to hold EA accountable for the quality they release. Thanks for watching.